Greetings, my fellows and lovely sovereign thinkers. This is LLP's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy Mango, South Florida, and today's date is Tuesday, October 23rd, 2018. So let us begin. Greetings, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, a little bit groggy. Worked all week, crazy hours. That's what happens when you're in the entertainment industry. But it's all good. I'm Matt Stash, located at 107 Southwest 2nd Avenue in the heart of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, adjacent with Revolution Live and America's Backyard. Cool little speakeasy facility. Nice little artwork. Got all the Night of the Dead props here. You should check it out and tell them Loki Luck the Third or Craig sent you. Good coffee, good bar. So it's pretty neat. I like it here. They always treat me well. Yeah, so interesting stuff is going on. Of course, everyone's still talking about the deceased investigative journalist that was in the Saudi consulate. It's funny because there's a big thing now. Before that, no one ever talked about the Sharia law or anything, like people getting their heads chopped off and hands chopped off. How Saudi Arabian kingdom always treated their people. Even the Shiite Muslims there are second-class citizens. They're garbage in the eyes of the kingdom. And I'm not here to say, "Oh, this guy doesn't count." I find that irrelevant. However, what took so long? Now everyone's talking about it. And I see a lot of doublespeak, even from politicians. Like even you got some politicians that want to talk about Cuba's human rights violations. But when it comes to Saudi Arabia, give them the red carpet treatment and kiss the floor they walk on. It doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, etc. They always had that royal treatment for the Sauds. So all you folks out there want to talk about the partisan politics game, it's boring, dull, and stagnant. And I noticed too there's some earthquakes. I've been reading about some earthquakes happening in the Vancouver Island area of British Columbia. There's a fault line there supposed to reach from Vancouver area to Northern California. And according to some people, I read some articles from geologists, said this makes the San Andreas fault line nothing. If that goes, anything from the west of I-5 can be very effective. Whereas Vancouver, Portland, Seattle, etc. Everyone has to pay attention to these areas. Prepare yourselves to the best of your ability. That's what Mother Nature's all about. People complain about hurricanes. At least we get enough time to prepare. And has this catastrophic ordeals as well, like the brothers and sisters up in the panhandle of the state of Florida, Panama Beach, Mexico Beach, and beyond. That's how that's what life is. You didn't have a hurricane that powerful for 60 years. Just to give you an example. So, even down here, we didn't really have a major hurricane in a long time. Maybe probably last one was not Wilma, but Andrew in '92. I was in the Kendall Green area, north of Country Walk, where that place was leveled. Because the eye, not just the eye wall itself, a lot of the homes there were built like crap. I know for a fact. I've seen them built the area. So one thing about natural disasters, you can't escape from it. There's people left Florida because of the last hurricane here in somewhere in North Carolina. Hopefully they're okay from Florence. So it doesn't matter. You have to prepare and work together. I've been saying this for a long time. Tired of these lone rangers and people running amok like anxiety attacks. It doesn't get you anywhere. Get yourself hurt, killed. That affect your families as well. They could be in that same line when you have that mindset. So, like I said, we're not perfect. We got to be ready at all times. All right, so I'm going to be talking some topics here, as usual. And this one just caught my eye. I just actually got it from my Gmail account. You hear people in the background. They're having fun, discussing business and all that. It's a cool place to do it. So come to Stash when you have a chance. You won't be disappointed. So I got this from Covert Politics, and it actually came from New Eastern Outlook. Good site, great site to check out. That one and Land Destroyer. Those are two awesome sites. Makes you folk really, if you want to know about one world order, corruption, Western intervention. It's a real good site to check out. It's not going around hating your country or hate the government. You're not supposed to trust them. I mean, you can be critical on rogue elements within our government. Each country has rogue elements, regardless of where you're from. All right, well, this one here came out yesterday by Christopher Black, which he's an attorney from Toronto. It's entitled Top Secret Rwanda War Crimes Cover Up. And this is during the time of the 100-day genocide or democide or ethnocide, whatever you want to call it. Around April to July of 1994, what he said, 800,000 to 1 million people were slaughtered. And now, as they say here, looks like someone else, some organization was behind it. Possibly NATO, according to this article. But I'll just read this for you. And as it reads, the United States and its allies are experts at covering their crimes and finding scapegoats to take the blame for them. They are doing it now with their disinformation campaigns against Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela, North Korea, and Syria. The show trials at the UN's Yugoslav Tribunal, the ICTY, were all about covering up NATO's war crimes and spinning lies to blame everything on the Serbs who resisted NATO's aggression. And it was interesting. You know who was the top general for NATO at that time? Wesley Clark. That's right. Look up General Wesley Clark and the war crimes on Serbs. Or Bosnia. The Bosnian crimes of General Wesley Clark. And just to let you folks know, to all you Michael Moore worshippers, he endorsed him in 2004, and please look that up. You'll be surprised. The people you want to praise are nothing more than hypocrites. Okay, I'll continue on here. They use their influence at International Criminal Court for the same purposes. And now a document has come to light, leaked from the UN Rwanda War Crimes Tribunal, the ICTR, that contains the report on the war crimes of the U.S.-supported Rwanda Patriotic Front that invaded Rwanda from Uganda in 1990, conducted 4 years of terrorist operations against Rwanda people and government. Then in 1994 launched their final offensive and slaughtered their way to power. To discuss this document marked top secret, I have burdened the reader with a brief history of events from the evidence available in order to give this some context. The night of April 6, 1994, the Hutu presidents of Rwanda and Burundi, Junovel Habyarimana and Cyprian Ntaryamira, hope I pronounced his names correctly, and General Nasabimana, the Rwandan Army Chief of Staff, as well as several other dignitaries of the French flight crew, were murdered when the plane they were on was shot down over Calgary Airport by anti-craft missiles fired by the Tutsi-led Rwanda Patriotic Front, or RFP, with the assistance of the governments of several countries. Can we say co-conspiracy? Huge conspiracy, excuse me. Inside job, conspiracy, etc. And what's interesting about this, I like to stop here, because the people in Rwanda, even if I'm correct, the southern part of the nation wanted to live in peace, because they've been in conflict politically for 400 years. All right? The people were tired. All right? And what really disturbs me the most is that innocent people were murdered by these parasites. Okay, that's how you got to look at these things. That's how you got to look at tyranny as a whole. You can't be friendly to them. You can't praise them. You can't kiss their rings. They deserve a good lynching through judicial due process. And I say that out of principle and being symbolic. I'll continue on here. Paul Kagame, the leader of the RPF, junta now in control of Rwanda, who was seen with the U.S. Army soldiers at the headquarters before 2 days before the event, give the order for the shootdown, but he did so with the assistance or complicity of the governments of the United States of America, Britain, Belgium, Canada, and Uganda. And you know who was president at the time for the United States? Do you remember William Jefferson Clinton? Bill Clinton, the man that wants change, the man that played the saxophone on Arsenio Hall show? Oh yeah, rock and roll in his blood. That's a Rolling Stone magazine. Praise this man and Al Gore. That's what I always say, my friend. You never believe the hype. It was the United States' allies hoping to gain total control of the resources of Central Africa through their proxies in the Tutsi RFP. That provides the military support for the RFP invasion of Rwanda from Uganda beginning in 1990, flowing that support through Uganda. That area has always been in conflict, too, for a long time. Hopefully a lot of folks can recall. Look up the hidden genocide of Uganda from 1971 to 1979 that was done by General Idi Amin Dada. 300,000 people were slaughtered, mostly Christians. And all those folks that there were complaining about the apartheid in South Africa, how come they never addressed that about Uganda? All because it's not a black and white thing or interracial conflict. Ain't that nice? So I will continue on here. It was known that the missiles used to shoot down the aircraft came from stockpiles the Americans had seized in the first war against Iraq, passed through Uganda, and it was in the warehouse of the Calgary airport, rented by a CIA Swiss front company that the missiles were assembled. In fact, the French anti-terrorist judge, Jean-Louis Bourguerie, who spent several years investigating the shootdown on the behalf of the families of the French flight crew, told Boutros Ghali, the General Secretary of the UN, in 1994, the CIA was involved in the shootdown, adding strength to the Boutros Ghali statement to Canadian journalists that the Americans are 100% responsible for what happened in Rwanda, our tax dollars at work. Come on, everyone, put your hand in your heart. Go, Bill Clinton was a great president, right? And so all his scumbag cohorts. Birds of a feather flock together, correct? There is a strong direction and circumstantial evidence that the Belgian and Canadian contingents of the UN peacekeeping force in Rwanda in 1993-1994, known as UNAMIR, were also involved in the shootdown, assisted the RPF in the final offense that was launched with a decapitation strike on the plane. It was Canadian General Romeo Dallaire, force commander of the UNAMIR, who arranged for one axis of the runway to the airport be closed at the request of the RFP, make it easier to shoot down the plane as it tried to land. Dallaire consistently sided with the RPF during this mandate, gave continuous military intelligence to the RPF about government army positions, took his orders from the American and Belgian ambassadors and another Canadian general, Maurice Barry, in the Department of Peacekeeping Operations in New York, that headed by Kofi Annan, another Rothschild stooge, or was, he is, lied to his boss, Jacques Roger Bobo, about his knowledge of a bill in the final Ugandan Army RFP offensive and turned a blind eye to the infiltration in Kalagi of possibly 13,000 RFP combatants when they were permitted only 600 under the Arusha Peace Accords signed in October 1993. It was another Canadian general, Guy Tulsengan, who took over the Dallaire from the RFP, took over when the UNIMR to help the RPF consolidated the rewards of its aggression. Bernduria was involved by both permitting 600 U.S. Army Rangers to be situated in Burundi in case they were needed by the RPF, and by invading Rwanda from the south in May 1994 to link up with RFP forces. Tanzania was involved in both planning the shootdown and itself invaded Rwanda from the east and south, blocking escape routes for the Hutu refugees fleeing the atrocities of the RFP in their sweep towards Kalagi. Finally, evidence indicates that Belgian UN soldiers were in immediate area of the missile launch site at the time of the shootdown were also involved. The report into the shootdown of the plane by the French investigative judge Jean-Louis Bourgueil was leaked to the French newspaper Le Monde in 2004 and stated that the RFP was responsible with the help of the CIA, but before the French judge began his investigations, the chief prosecutor for the Rwanda Tribunal, Canadian judge Louise Arbar, the same woman that framed up President Milosevic on the behalf of the USA at the Yugoslav Tribunal, was told in 1997 by her lead investigator, Australian lawyer Michael Hourigan, that it was an RFP commando group known as the Network, with the assistance of a foreign power implicating the CIA, that was responsible for the shootdown. At the point, Abar, instead of prosecuting everyone involved, as she should have done on American instruction, ordered the investigation closed and kept secret, thereby by making an accessory to a war crime. The facts relating to Abar's actions is detailed in Michael Horrigan's affidavit, still available on the internet, and is reported of the Office of Internal Oversight of the UN. And hopefully folks look that up and you have a chance. During the war crimes trials at the Rwanda defense lawyers, representing the only group targeted for prosecution, the side that had tried to resist aggression, members of the Rwandan government and its armed forces and its officials, as well as the Hutu intellectuals, demanded full disclosure of all evidence the prosecution has relevant to what happened in the war and the allegations of war crimes made against our clients. In the trial of my client, General Nandeli Yamama, hopefully I pronounced the person's name correct, Chief of Staff of the Gendarmerie, who, after a long struggle, was finally acquitted, made repeated requests for disclosure of the evidence, but we never received the complete disclosure we demanded, because over the time we became aware that the prosecution had much more material than we are willing to show. One famous example of the Gersony report made by Robert Gersony of USAID, officials seconded to the UN, who filed a report to the High Commander for Refugees in October 1994, setting out his findings. The RPF forces engaged in the systematic massacres of Hutus across Rwanda during their offense, which he characterized as genocide. This report, too, was kept secret by the UNHCR and by prosecution lawyers in our trial, who even denied that it existed. But in 2008, my team found it by chance and in the prosecution's files, and it was able to produce it into evidence in the trial, along with a letter from Paul Kagame dated August of 1994, in which he refers to a meeting with Ugandan President Museveni, in which the plan for Zaire was discussed. Now it's Congo, okay, just to let you folks know. Those two agreed that the Hutus were in the way of the plan, but Kagame stated that they were working with the Belgian, American, and British intelligence services to execute the plan, and the problem would be resolved. The world has seen what his plan involved, this plan involved: the invasions of Zaire, extermination of hundreds of thousands of Hutu refugees, the killings of millions of Congolese in the war that has followed, as detailed in the leaked UN mapping report of 2010, and the shattering of Congo into fragments to be easily exploited by Western mining companies. Yes, can we say Club of Rome, New World Order 101, fascism, corporatism? Absolutely. It's not even capitalism, so don't even use Adam Smith's ideology in vain. Yet, little did we know, as our trial proceeded, that the prosecution had in their hands another document, is an internal report dated October 1st, 2003, which, in their own investigative list, has described in 31 pages of the crime of the RPF forces that they had investigated. This report, designated top secret, had recently leaked, and the copy was sent to me, among others, to examine, and is damning of the RPF and therefore into their Western allies as the others. The document with the subject general reports on the special investigation concerning the crimes committed by the Rwanda Patriotic Army during 1994 was sent then to prosecutor Hassan Jallo by 3 members of the prosecution special investigation unit. It provided to the prosecutors the evidence that had gathered that the RPA had committed massacres of thousands of Hutus in various places across Rwanda. For example, Murumba, Kabagi, Rambara, Gitarama, and Butere, as well as the murder of 3 Catholic bishops and 9 other priests at the church. The circumstances set out in the report confirms journalists' report of similar massacres and also confirms witness testimony we heard during the trials that the RPA forces had infiltrated men into civilian barricades to kill in order to pin the crimes on the Rwandan government forces and the youth group known as Intra Hamri. It's interesting. I'm glad I'm hearing the other side of this, because I read a good book called The Holocaust of Rwanda. It's by I think his name is James Hubbard or Robert Hubbard, one of those two, and he talks about this as well. So that's what you got to see. You always got to look at all sides of when it comes to these democide, genocide, genocidal events or ethnocidal events. Because one of the things you got to look at, because I know they try to blame it on the Rwandan government, the Hutu government, on the 800,000 million people were slaughtered. But when you go a little further, all sides aren't good people. Okay, that's why government in Latin means control of the mind. You can never trust these individuals. I know I always repeat myself on a lot of my shows, but for first-time listeners, you have to comprehend this. Now, proceed here. Finally, they provide once again further evidence that RPA did shoot down a presidential plane, confirmed the findings of Michael Harrigan in 1997, detailed above, in which Louis Arbour had order kept secret, confirmed the findings of the French report, and confirmed the evidence we filed at the trial to the same effect, including a radio intercept from Kagame to his forces the day after the plane was hit. Celebrating the downing of a plane as a successful operation is very important and damning report kept secret. One wonders how many more secret reports they have. There is not space here to detail the horrific crimes set out in the document or relate to you the evidence we heard at the trials of what one Hutu refugee, speaking of the hunting down of Hutu refugees in the Congo by the RP forces, assisted by spotter planes with U.S. forces, Air Force markings, called a genocide with no name. So I provide a few examples from this document to give the readers a picture. On page 28, in reference to the capital city of Rwanda, Kigali, it states, Kanobi, a government military base at the end of May 1994, when the RPA captured Kanobi. Approximately 1,500 civilians had taken to refugee camps. They were all massacred by the RPA. Kanobi Airport at the end of May 1994, approximately 300 civilians of all ages were brought and executed. Moscow Kanobi Commune at the end of July 1994, in 5 days, approximately 6,000 women and children and men were executed with their arms tied behind their back and elbow. Camp Kami during the capture of the camp of the RPA, thousands of civilians who had taken refuge there were executed. The picture is clear, yet to this date, not a single member of the RPF or the other Western allies have been charged with responsibility for the crimes, and Paul Kagame, who ordered these killings, is hosted and with smiles by leaders from Canada, France to China. The prosecutors who decided to protect these war criminals and who, by withholding evidence of what really happened, obstructed justice, conspired to frame up those standing accused before the tribunal, turned international justice into a travesty, and gave these criminals immunity from prosecution and encouragement to commit more crimes, have moved on to lucrative positions. So if you're corrupt and you're a piece of garbage, you want to kiss the floor you walk on. That's how these scumbags work and think. Fatima Benesoda, one of the former ITCR prosecutors, now a prosecutor for the International Criminal Court. Where is the justice for the 6,000 men, women, and children murdered at Masaka? Where is the hue and cry for the head of Paul Kagame? There was a head and as there was a head for the President Milosevic and the allegations he faced for, or as President Assad or Syria faces? Where is the hue and cry for the head of General Delary or for Louis Arbor, who condone these crimes as there of General Melodic regarding these allegations about Srebrenica? And I did talk about them on my past episodes as well, and even in the National Security Archives they talk about this also. There is none. Instead, they are made celebrities who we live in a world in which criminals have seized hold of morality and justice and hang them from a tree. Christopher Black. Very good article from him. And this is what we always got to look at these areas, my friends, is how deep does the rabbit hole go? Pretty damn deep. And that's why you always got to see things in a bigger picture. Look at all sides of the story. But they want us to say, shut up, sit there, shut up. Is what we're going to feed you if you like it or not. That's how these people think. Why is that? Because they're parasites. They could care less about you and I. So, one of those areas you have to look at. And I get really ticked off about this as well. But, because another thing you gotta look at as well. A lot of folks that were slaughtered, even a lot of Hutus and Rwandans, they're all Rwandan or Hutus or Tutsis, don't matter, all Rwandan people of Rwanda were slaughtered by government. And one of the things they took advantage of on the people was victim disarmament. Gun control's a lie. Much for our lives. The people who are involved in this group better look at this and study the history. You're going to trust the government for your safety? Then you're a bunch of damn fools. Stop living in the world of underdog. The sweet Polly purebred is only a cartoon, not reality. So I want to look for something here, add this up. So, interesting little site here. Intabaza.com. Yeah, it's a great, multiple sites. Definitely want to add this to the list. I know I was looking for a German report on a special investigation concerning the crimes committed by Rwanda Patriotic Army. So, what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to add this website to the footnotes, because it's very complex than what it is. So I'm going to add that to it. And share me your thoughts. That'd be awesome. It'd be very awesome. All right, my friends. I'll be right back. All right, cool. So I'm definitely want to add on here to the footnotes Intabaza.com, and it's mainly about Rwanda. Interesting stuff. You still get the general report too. And so I'm going to definitely put this on here on my footnotes so you folks to really see what's going on. And of course, Kagame. Yeah, a lot of stuff here, man. It's and it has to be addressed regardless, okay? Regardless what side you're on. His old main idea is the principle. Okay, so it looks like Kagame, the way he looks here. He likes to see other people do the dirty work, but if it goes out, if you give it to his own medicine, he'll probably take a dump in his pants and probably kill himself like a coward that he is. Just to give you guys an intake. All right, next one here. I see everyone posted on Facebook about the possible invasion that's coming from North Nicaragua. They went to crash the borders, and I know too a lot of these folks are people being hired to do this. Called Invasion USA by Ben Crystal, came out today. Personal Liberty. It says here, an army is marching on us. Right now, somewhere beneath the line separates the United States from the Third World, a massive force approaches intent on pouring into America like Spaniards did in Mexico. They rode across the southern frontier at Mexico's finest like toros over huevos. While the arena-sized crowd contains many men, women, and children whose dreams of life among the gringos are filled with champagne and caviar, or at least portable water and edible food. Many of them thinking more of Grand Theft Auto than America the Beautiful. The latest estimates placed the size of the mob around 10,000, even if only 1% them to aspire to an American nightmare instead of the American dream. That's 100 new rapists, murderers, MS-13, narco-terrorists, or garden variety thugs who making a run for a border, while overwhelming majority might never do worse than overstaying the time on the parking meter. It would remiss as if I did not note that nearly all of them illegally crossed the border separating Guatemala and Mexico, and say they plan when they reach the border separate us from them. Whenever they attend, from day labor to drug dealer, they intend to do it here. And somehow, despite the danger of unfettering illegal immigration presents to any nation, which allows it, I'm looking at you here. Pretty much every country in Europe are actually embroiled in a debate over what to do. While Americans who think America is worth protecting have expressed alarm, the Democrats are acting like little kids on the night before Christmas. While conservatives see people, some of them who are intent on doing serious harm to the Union, liberals see potential voters to be purchased with taxpayer-funded entitlements, while I suggest we consider combining the mob for male factors. Pro-amnesty crowd wants to show them where to keep the valuables. While we call for action to preserve the country, they act on what the country should call illegal aliens. Moreover, they don't even like the place. Even the height of the Obama regime wars on liberty, liberals never stopped shirking about their grievance. Since Hillary Clinton came up one borough short of the El Presidente special, they've yammered about racism and sexism, which define everyone and everything. The same people who insist we should let every time Thomas, Ricardo, and Jorge crash on our nation couch despise everything about America. Imagine how disappointed our newest residents will be when the liberals rolled out the red carpet and have turned the house into a replica of the crappy Haciendas they fled. Eventually, we will have imported enough of what makes Latin America such a party that we'll be drinking ourselves under the same table. The cohort bearing down upon us like Cortez on the Aztecs won't be the last. But rather than build up the battlements, we're yelling at each other about whether to build them at all. Someone should tell pro-amnesty crowd how well that worked out for the Aztecs. That is true. Great little point there. So what you're seeing right now, what's going on, a lot of them being paid. I've seen them getting money, a great amount. Some of the video footage I've seen, this is nothing more than a synthetic cause. The rank and file who participated in this march are being political pawns. This is what the Club of Rome wants. This is what the One World Order wants to benefit. Benefit them, not the people. And it doesn't matter if they have the same surname as mine. Okay? If they're all Hungarian descent, it doesn't matter. Because one you got to look at, Kio Bono, who benefits? Okay, the race card, the ethnic card, isn't going to work. It's being thinned down, saturated, not authentic. So that's one thing you have to look at. And if I remember President Trump just talk about, may have to have military troops on the border based on this. When you look at this respectfully, it is considered an invasion. And it doesn't matter where these folks are coming from. And I do digress. It's ethics, not ethnics. And another thing, too, sometimes they got bad foreign policy, can blow back in our faces. When the United States telling other nations how to do things, even in Latin America, great book to read, War is a Racket. Okay, and the Economic Hitman. So those things you should look at as well. One thing I know for sure, my friends, it's not gonna benefit anyone, but for the ones who are who are pulling the strings. And I say that ethically, not ethnically. And like I said before, with this talk about bringing the troops down to the border, is to repel an invasion guaranteed under Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. So you have to see that as well. Of course, the garbage media is going to be going on a manifest, make you feel guilty. Don't buy it. I say shoot your aim at, get a firearm, sit down. When the TV's on, aim at it, shoot it, you feel better. That's what Clayton Douglas from Free American said. And it was interesting about that. Looks like Hurricane Willa may be hitting along the Mexican coast and maybe going near that border as a low pressure. So let's just see if they can survive this or not. All right. Next one here came from by Brandon Smith off of Bob Lewison Alerts. The establishment must diminish alternative analysts as crisis unfolds. There is a notion within the mainstream media that certain economic indicators are unassailable. They never stop being reliable. The look at and report on the system is rather outdated and extremely limited in scope, showcasing and cherry-picking only net positive statistics, even if those stats do not represent reality. The result is a kind of holographic view of the financial structure and mirage of a healthy and vibrant foundation that simply does not exist. This fraudulent view appeals to the masses for a time because it provides fuel for false hope. In economics, and analysts must always account for two major factors, the hard math and human psychology. These factors tend to conflict during the times when a financial bubble is present. They tend to converge when such bubbles implode. One must never understate the power of public psychology, though even when the math is screaming that danger is in the present system, a naive and misinformed populace, coupled with the central bank manipulation, can keep a dead economy in a state of profane reanimation for much longer than it seems logically possible. The magic shows only last for so long, however, and eventually the truth strikes those with blind faith in the machine brutally and without mercy. On the financial side of the great farce, in most of the positive signs, we see a purely debt-driven, cheap debt and credit liquidity has kept zombie banks alive for years beyond their expiration date, but has also trickled down onto the main street, when we see extensive commercial retail development and spike in employment opportunities, and of course the box stores and construction are being undertaken by developers in the deep red, and most of the debt will not be paid off for years, if at all. The rise in job creation extends from the retail bubble, where low-wage service jobs are available in abundance, yet higher-wage jobs that support families are dwindling. This explains why companies looking to fill vacant employee positions are having such a hard time. Over 95 million working-age people are unemployed in the U.S., but are not counted as unemployed by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Millions who find it more profitable to stay home and collect their welfare benefits than slave away in a McDonald's or a Walmart. The stock market itself is essentially another debt bubble, driven by corporate stock buybacks that have been funded for years by an oversight loan to the Federal Reserve, as well as near zero interest rates. As interest rates rise, the debt becomes unserviceable, and thus the bull market begins to fizzle and stocks begin to plunge. As I have covered often over the years, in which we see in the mainstream version of economic events is rarely, if ever, supported by concrete evidence. The establishment media, not as an information source, but as a tool for encouraging public ignorance, which can be exploited to feed the broken economy for just a little while longer. I suspect some of these gatekeepers even pride themselves as liars with a noble purpose, the purpose being to mold perception of the system and thereby extend the life of the system. They see themselves as guardians. I see them as saboteurs. While many in the public do not make it their ambition to become experts on the mechanics of the economy, people still tend to sense instinctively when something is broken with the fiscal environment. They may not know why there is a problem, but absurd optimism can only levitate them above the muck for so long. Recent events are beginning to reveal the extent of the fantasy. These are issues that alternative analysts have been worrying about for the better part of the past decade. But only now, in the past year, is this information being taken seriously. I've seen a propaganda meme flooding into discussion boards recently in reference to alternative economics, and a little something like this. Alternative economists are doom and gloomers that have been wrong for 10 years, but a broken clock is still right twice a day. I find this simple argument somewhat hilarious because of the extraordinary level of dishonesty inherited in it, but I also find it revealing in a way. First, let's be clear. Alternative economists have been right for the past 10 years and far ahead of the mainstream in terms of predicting fiscal trends based on real data. As I have always said, economic collapse is a process, not an event. It's something that happens in stages or phases over time, not something that occurs overnight or in the span of a few days. People who think that the national goal to global disaster is a sudden and inexplicable affair watch far too much television. They also understand that the historic moments of crisis we read about in books are merely the culmination of the years of decline. Most, if not all, crashes are preceded by years of warning signs that should have been heeded at the times, but were mostly ignored. Through the 1920s, Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises predicted the collapse of the German mark as well as the stock market crash of 1929. In 1993, after the initial crash, he also predicted the central bank's inventions through interest rates increases and other measures would prolong disaster rather than end it. Mises saw the danger well in advance, but he was ignored until it was too late. His writings from this period can be studied and published in a collection titled Causes of Economic Crisis. You can read this yourself. Very good stuff. Was Mises' broken clock that just happened to be right after years of incorrect predictions, looking back onto the complexity of the events of that era and how Mises was able to correctly outline how they would play out years ahead of time, this argument is clearly nonsense. Before the credit crash of 2008, there were multiple alternative economists warning about the dangers of derivative bubbles and the coinciding mortgage debt bubble. Some of them many years before the negative effects became visible in stock markets. All of them were laughed at or ignored right up to the crash, even after it became obvious that these analysts were correct in their predictions. The mainstream still tried to snub them, of course. As is often the case, mainstream gatekeepers in economics promotes false data as a means to mold public perception. One moment. As I'll continue on here, thus aiding central banks and governments in inflating financial bubbles and perpetuating destructive fiscal practices. But once the fantasy comes tumbling down, they seek to remain relevant. They deflect blame by claiming that has always seen the crisis coming. They were there on the front lines, trying to educate the masses, and sometimes this is true. The mainstream does tend to shift its rhetoric mere weeks or months before the crash happens. They were never on the front lines. They didn't see the train wreck coming. They are only Johnny-come-lately coattail riding weasels that are seeking to protect their legacies rather than protect the populace from harm. These people downplay the work of far better men and women in the alternative fields as a means to elevate themselves and their fragile reputations. I believe the broken clock narrative is a coordinated disinformation campaign, an attack or analysis who, like Ludwig von Mises, have been actively predicting the process of the collapse for years. It is designed to inoculate the public to the alternative media just before they are about to be proven correct. In other words, someone knows that the ongoing collapse will become more obvious to the public, and that, by extension, alternative economists are about to gain more attention. We can't have that now, can we? The alternative economist predictions will receive the attention they deserve. The risk for the establishment is that some of our solutions may be taken seriously as well. Solutions like the concept of decentralization, localization of production, gold-backed currency system, the imprisonment of the banking elites that caused the crash in the first place, etc. When it's all said and done, mainstream gatekeepers hope that the alternative media in our work will be forgotten as doomsday ramblings, the one that one time we got lucky, but we should be dismissed otherwise. The people who work diligently to alternative field are meant to be discouraged, to give up. We're supposed to feel like modern-day Cassandras, cursed prophets that are correct on predictions of the future that no one listens to. We're supposed to throw our hands up in the air and quit. I don't see this fourth generation welfare tactic are being as successful, though. The establishment banks and the economists that pander to them have burned all their goodwill and social capital. They have been wrong so much and so often that the public is looking elsewhere for their information. This had led to the explosion in interest in alternative economic analysis that is occurring today. The broken cockle eye tells me two things. One, it tells me that the system is about to fail to the point that it can no longer be covered up or denied. Two, it tells me that the establishment is worried about the amount of influence the alternative media will have as the crisis unfolds. For the past 10 years, we have been right, and the danger for the elites is that the public might find out. Of course, there's a thing called being stripped naked, the corrupt, or wearing no clothes. So this is why even a person like myself, I always encourage people to go a little bit further. I always like to give you facts to the best of my ability as well. Little history lesson. I read about the fall of the Reichsmark. I even like sites like John Birch Society, like them or not, they got some good information. You should always look and verify. Go further. That's the name of the game. Never go by face value. Go further. The past is today's greatest teacher. And right now, the United States and many other countries, including Canada, are on the fiat system. How long can it last in Latin? No monopoly money. So the question is the U.S. in big debt? I don't know, because the truth of the matter is that if money's printed out of thin air, how that has value? It doesn't. So that's why you got to always see these areas and go further and read a lot of facts, including the history of the fall of the Reichsmark. That's like I've been talking. I know I talked about that a long time. That's how Hitler got into power. Okay, so you always got to look at these areas, and those corrupt bastards, the central banksters, are wigging out. Because more people, a good amount of people, are learning about this every day. You got to be vigilant. You even encourage your states to support gold and silver. Use gold and silver as for certain transactions. That would be a great start. It can be done. Don't say it can't be, because you know what? You won't do anything. You want everyone else to do the job for you. Networking is the way to do things. Working together. I've been saying this for a good period of time. But only admit it. And do I have all the answers? Absolutely not. We all got our strengths and flaws, each and every one of us. But if people have better talents than myself, and vice versa, but we could unify together and build a bigger, greater foundation for all of us. That's what teamwork's about. So remember, if the economy collapses, don't just go after Donald Trump. Because I know he likes to parade himself a lot, be flamboyant. Focus on the Federal Reserve, the World Bank, the IMF. Remember, the IMF supports the purging the land from the white farmers in South Africa. They love it. They love that control stuff. So who owns who, right? Okay. Well, finally, some good news here by Daisy Luther. Always like her work. Very admirable. The organic prepper. The new social media alternative to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and other big tech platforms. Lately, I've written a lot about the social media purge and how big tech social media platforms are attempting to control the narrative, the elections, and public perception through censorship and financial blacklisting. Lots of people are ready to leave websites like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube for less censored pastures. But what are the social media alternatives that are currently available? Here are some social media alternatives to check out. Before we take it into the alternative, please understand all of them will still start small. None of them will be able to be big techs without a lot of help and support. We've gotten used to free social media because the companies with whom we've dealt with virtually raped us, reading our so-called private messages and pillaging our data to sell to the highest bidder. So reality isn't free after all. Exactly. You probably won't find your parents, your best friend from kindergarten, and your Aunt Susie on these platforms. Not yet anyway. But what you will be able to do is speak without fear of censorship. You'll be able to find yourself alternative media sources there and find answers that simply aren't supported by the mainstream. The only way to change this Despotian atmosphere is to actually make changes ourselves. Go where the freedom is. MeWe. MeWe call themselves a next-gen social network. They raised $4.8 million and launched back in 2016 to take on Facebook and Twitter. There are about 6 million members strong so far, and Mark Weinstein, the founder, plans for his $500 million by 2022. I'm on there, so in the future, MeWe will also revolutionize social media with decentralization, which will render Facebook's spying and tracking data model completely obsolete. Weinstein added a comment that suggested is indeed trying to replace Facebook. Awareness around the world has never been higher in regarding news, feed manipulation, and privacy infractions. Government regulations will never truly interfere with Facebook's data collection model, evidenced both in California's new 2020 privacy rules and Europe's GDPR. But the free market can, and MeWe is here giving people great communication technology and a true multi-feature platform with none of Facebook's BS's. And you can go on the account. On that, I'm on there. So you're going to follow me, hook me up. I'll be great. I'm still learning the ropes too on that site, so I'm gonna be patient. Gab.ai. Gab.ai is a platform that's similar to Twitter. You have 300 characters which to make your point. It has been called the alt-right social media alternative, and although Gab itself doesn't censor its users, Microsoft has threatened to take them down due to hate speech. A lot of folks that got banned, shadow banned, or censored by Twitter are there. Gab founder Andrew Torba feels that they aren't being portrayed honestly in the media. We have survived relentless and coordinated smear campaign by dishonest mainstream media without any outside funding from advertisers or venture capitalists. Our community will continue to thrive and grow thanks to individuals from around the world who believe in putting people and free speech above politically correct corporate agendas. Gab has always and will always be powered by you, the people. Gab is not just a social network, it's a social movement. With any social network you see in your feed will depend on who your friends and who you follow. Real.video is by Brighton. Real.video was started by Mike Adams of Natural News in response to mass deplatforming on YouTube. This is the YouTube alternative to give voices and free speech to those who are being systematically targeted and censored by YouTube, Facebook, and Google and Twitter for essentially being pro-liberty person. Stand up for America and stand up for the Bill of Rights or just basic human rights for that matter. Adams also would know about censorship firsthand. Google delisted his site, Natural News, from his search engine results. The Real.videos is in the process to change its name to Brighton.com and hosts numerous videos that were banned by Twitter. It is still in the developmental stages, so there's an occasional glitch, but that so far has been relatively smooth user experience. I'm on there too, but I'm going to practice put more of my shows on that platform as well. There's the one I haven't heard about, Mastodon. Another buddy network is Mastodon, which has been taglined by giving social media back to you. It is free, open source network, which means that developers can contribute to it because it designs is publicly accessible. Ultimately, Mastodon is a decentralized alternative to all commercial social media network platforms, which means that no single company owns or can monopolize your communication. I found it confusing to use. Maybe you need to be more techie, and it was put off by the fact that I needed to log in via Twitter. Alright, so perhaps this is just so you can connect with the same people. It's always worthwhile to look at your options. Mastodon was started by Eugene Rucko, who was fed up with the changes that Twitter was making that closely resembled the Facebook algorithms. Last year, as Twitter began moving away from a purely chronological feed, Rucko began building the back end for what would become Mastodon. Instead of building a unified service, Rucko envisioned something more like email or RSS, a distributed system that lets you send public messages to anyone who follows you on the service. Anyone can create a server and host their own instance of Mastodon. And Mastodon works in the background and to connect them. Here's a beginner's guide, using Mastodon and all that. Dysphoria is a social network built on 3 cornerstones: decentralization, freedom, and privacy. To join Dysphoria, you should have chose a pod, which is a group of potentially like-minded people. Each pod is independently hosted, which should lessen the likelihood of corporate censorship. You can follow the hashtags that interest you. You can categorize people by how you know them: family, friends, work, etc. Then you can control who sees different things you post. Dysphoria is decentralized, which means one person, no person owns it. This doesn't mean that have any form of advertisement or corporate interference. It does not collect any of your data. When you create your account, you're responsible for your own data and retain the ownership of your personal data. Unlike Facebook, Dysphoria allows you to use whatever identity you want. So pseudonym and nickname are fine to display as your profile. And you can look that up too. Or you can join an old-fashioned form. I know that personally. I'm not too jazzed about learning some of these new options and prefer the more familiar layouts of realvideo.com, MeWe, and Gab. But honestly, people on social media can be so horrible that Selko Megovic and I started an old-fashioned forum that's a throwback to the 90s, early 2000s, like the forum, because they're familiar, comfortable, and they draw like-minded people together. Take a look at that as well. So, they're pretty cool stuff here, yeah? I'm going to have to join this site. All right? I like forums because they're familiar, comfortable, and draw like-minded people together. While there are tens of thousands of forums out there, if you're interested in freedom, self-reliance, and survival, I hope you join ours. For privacy reasons, we ask you not to use a real name anywhere on the registration form. All you need is a real email address to send you password updates, etc. So here's a link for that. There are social media options. Humans are social creatures. No matter how the introverted we might be, we seek all connections with others. These days, a lot of those connections are online. Thanks to the internet, it's never been easier to find like-minded people. I personally have friends around the world who I met online and that I never would have crossed paths with otherwise. The big tech companies like Facebook and Twitter have taken advantage of our desire to do this. They hooked people, and they manipulate what the users would see with the algorithms. They collected every word you ever typed on social media, made assessments about you that they could sell that information to advertisers. They made a fortune off of every person who ever used their services, and deep down in the fine print, people gave them permission to do so. Now they're trying to control the narrative by removing people who dissent against things like war, police brutality, and corrupt politicians. If you're looking for alternative media outlets, check out the options above. They won't be able to take on big tech without us. Do you use any alternative social media? Did I leave any social media options they're enjoying right now? So please share them in the comments below. So coming soon, articles on alternative search engines, alternative news, and aggregated websites. And of course, you gotta always look at these things, my friends. It is important. And I was never too surprised what these big tech giants are doing. That's one thing you always got to look at. Got to be vigilant. Never get too personal on these sites, especially these big sites. There's a lot of other options out there. Do it. I have a bunch on my social media sites. I'm at reallittlepit.org, World MX, it's called. That's another good site. Yeah, I'm going to share that on my footnotes. On my contacts, you can look that up as well on my Spreaker page. It's very cool, and I will donate the money to these people once in a while because, hey, keep the thing going, all right? All right, my friends, that's it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share it with social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or me send something that's interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with decorum. And all my social media sites and contact information will be on my Spreaker page as well. And that is it. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.